I'll get on Twitter, I'll see something outrageous, I'll get triggered by it, but I mean, I'll get off 30 seconds later and it's over. Okay.
I'm white and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. You can support this project. Just go to echoplexmedia.com and click the support tab. Memberships through eplex.store or patreon.com/Echoplex are the best way. Or maybe, I don't know, buy a hat or something. I'm Producer Dave, and while it's still legal, you can find me on Grindr.
I am HK Perrin, and you can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Can you please turn off the noise gate that you're running? And reintroduce yourself.
All right. Is that better?
Yes, we can hear you speaking now.
All right. I am HK Perrin, and you can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Hell yeah. So your dream has come true. We're going to talk about electoral politics today.
Oh, God. I mean, I wish it was under better circumstances.
I mean, but you attempted to drag me down electoral politics rabbit holes on the show before, and I've refused. And now you get your opportunity. But in the context of Sam Harris telling you all the things as why the election was lost. It's called The Reckoning with Sam Harris.
Oh boy.
What are the odds that he does this?
Okay.
I think he's about like 7 out of 10, like 70%ish. So.
I was gonna say 75%. So
okay,
we're pretty simpatico on our prediction there. All right, well here it is. What the fuck ever.
Such a dramatic intro.
Welcome to the Making Sense podcast. This is Sam Harris. So the reckoning has arrived. Donald Trump has been reelected President of the United States, and it seems like he's going to have both houses of Congress. Of course, we know he already has the Supreme Court. And the question is, what to make of all this? Why did he win, and why did the Democrats lose? Well, first, we should acknowledge that this is the greatest comeback in American political history. It's as if Nixon got reelected to a second term after Watergate. It's better than that. Or worse, depending on what you think about Trump. Luckily, I hedged my bet here, and I never said anything too critical about the man. I've always been very respectful of him and Elon and the other innovators they have around them. I mean,
this is his attempt at a joke, I think.
Is he scared?
I think this is his attempt at a joke, but I'm just guessing.
Okay.
You guys just want to make America great again. Can't you just give them a chance? All kidding aside, I will let you know when I receive my first audit from the IRS. But what I think is needed now...
Oh, this guy's taxes are squeaky clean.
Honest assessment of why Trump won. Because it says a lot about our country that he did. It says a lot about how divided we are. It says a lot about the state of the media and the effects of social media. But above all, it says something that the Democratic Party and our elite institutions need to hear. Now, obviously, Trump's win and Harris's loss were determined by many factors. And I think everyone's in danger of believing that their pet issue explains everything that happened on Tuesday. Now, you could certainly make the case that it was immigration and the southern border, or it was inflation and the cost of groceries. You could even say it was the way Trump responded to that first assassination attempt, which, among other things, prompted Elon Musk to endorse him within minutes. Or it was Harris's weakness as a candidate and the way the Democratic Party coronated her, rather than allow some competitive process to happen. Or you could say that the blame lies with Biden himself and his disastrous decision to run for a second term. That was pure hubris. And of course, this blame extends to all the people who covered for him and lied to themselves or to the public about his competence for over a year.
So the competence thing, I think he's perfectly competent to delegate responsibility as the president, but yet he had no business running for president in that condition.
Yeah. I think it is very sad that in my lifetime, we've never had a non-boomer president.
I
guess we have when I was extremely young, but since I remember, every single president has been a baby boomer.
I think Obama's like on the cusp, right?
He's, I think, 61. That's still a baby boomer, right?
I'm not.
It's like right on the edge.
This culpability fell on Harris herself. What did she know about Biden and when did she know it? She never had a good answer for that question. Or to come to one of my hobby horses, it was her failure to have anything like a Sister Souljah moment where she could put some distance between her current self and the Kamala Harris of 2019, who seemed to be in lockstep with the far left of the Democratic Party. The truth, of course, is that all of these things contributed. And if one or two of them...
Do you know what a Sister Souljah moment is, HK?
No.
So real quick, in, I forget, I think it was when Clinton was running for re-election. There was someone named Sister Souljah who had said some bad things about America. And he was like, I don't know, said something about her being a talented musician, but she had no business shitting on America the way that she did or something like that. I don't remember it precisely, but it's sort of the idea that like, it's a punch the hippie moment, basically, is what he means.
Okay. So I think what Sam is saying here is she's too much of a leftist.
I think so. But again, he had all this other... Well, hold on. He said all these other things, and he kind of couches it all as maybe. So I'm going to give him some benefit of the doubt here, because we're only 3 minutes in, and he's probably going to say something fucking mind-expandingly stupid at some point during this. So,
okay, because if I recall correctly, she ran to the right on a lot of issues in this campaign.
Yeah, like the only analysis I had on a Sunday was that the Democrats, and somehow they got away with it in 2020, but they have somehow had this belief that people who are registered Republican aren't going to vote for Republicans. And so they went after those people, and people who are registered Republican tend to vote for Republicans.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, in fact.
Yes, that's why they're registered with that party.
Yep.
Changed, we would have had a different result. But the Harris campaign and the Democratic Party, in the last 100 days before the election, weren't in control of most of these variables. They could have messaged differently about all of them. And I think it would have been possible to talk about inflation and immigration better than they did. But their real failure, in my view, was to not pivot to the political center in a way that most people found credible. So to return to my hobby horse, I think there are some lessons that the Democrats really must absorb from what is undeniably a total political defeat. They simply have to recognize that several planks of their platform are thoroughly rotten. Identity politics is over. No one wants it. Latinos and blacks don't even want it, as witnessed by the fact that they moved to Trump in record numbers. Trump got a majority of Latino men nationwide, and in some counties he got a majority of Latino men and women, even after everything he has said about immigrants from Latin America over the years. How they're, quote, poisoning the blood of our people, which is right out of Mein Kampf. A comedian calls Puerto Rico a pile of garbage at a Trump rally, and the entire Democratic machine and all of liberal media seize upon it like a nuclear bomb has just vaporized an American city, and no one cared. Identity politics is dead.
Except there are no politics that are not identity politics.
Yep. I don't think it's that no one cared. I think it's that a lot of people just weren't paying attention.
Or just didn't vote.
Yeah.
They might have not liked it, but that doesn't make, I don't know, like one thing doesn't get you to vote. Like this analysis, I knew this is going to be the analysis, but like the problem here is you just take the word identity off and you just say politics and you mean the same thing, right? Because politics aren't about like, they're about like what people want. They're about what groups of people who have identities as individuals and as groups, what those people want and what they're willing to vote for. So I don't understand how you do this and divorce it from the identity of individuals or the identities of groups.
Yep. So like if you look at the numbers between 2020 and 2024, Donald Trump got a few 100,000 more votes than he did in 2020. And Kamala Harris got 10 million fewer votes than Joe Biden in 2020. So it's not something that Donald Trump did to reach out to new groups of people. It's something that the Democratic Party did to lose the vote of 10 million people.
Right. And it seems
it's
like
those people didn't go vote for Republicans. They just didn't vote.
Right. It seems like, and the groups of people, the people they lost, like it seems like are the groups of people that Sam is talking about. Trump probably did. If the problem is we're not going to probably have this kind of granular analysis, but I bet Trump didn't get more votes among like Latino and black men. I bet Harris just got way less.
Probably.
That's what flipped it. You know, it didn't change for black women. They didn't. I don't know what the numbers for turnout were, but that was like 96-4 or some shit.
Yep.
Black women will one day save this country.
We have to bury it. Okay, there's one species of identity politics that had an enormous effect on this election, and most Democrats don't seem to realize it. Around 0.5% of American adults identify as transgender or non-binary. That's 1 in 200 people. And yet the activism around this identity has deranged our politics for as long as Trump has been in politics. One lesson.
What the fuck is he talking about? Like the only thing that's going on in politics regarding trans people is that the Republicans are absolutely shitting on them. Like
right,
trans people aren't out here demanding to have more rights than everyone else.
Well, the other thing is I didn't see the Democratic Party doing a whole lot of outreach in that area either. It was more like, and you too, basically, you know what I'm saying? So this wasn't the issue of this election. In fact, I think the Republicans tried to use it as a wedge issue in 2022. And the thing that everybody was thinking was going to happen with this red wave in 2022 didn't happen because they leaned super hard on it. I don't think the Republicans, even during this election, leaned super hard on that shit. At least not anybody running for office or anybody like super high up the food chain. At least not that I saw. I'm not saying it wasn't mentioned, but this wasn't a big issue in this election.
Yeah, even if you take, half a percentage of like all of America, which is like, what would 0.5% of America be? About 30 or 3 million people, I think.
Sure, something like that.
So even if you added every single person in America who identifies as trans or non-binary to what Democrats got, it still wouldn't make up for all of the votes that the Democrats lost.
Right. So but the other thing is, I just think Sam's wrong here. I don't think this wasn't a big part of anybody's message, at least not on the national level, right? Sure, like school boards and county councils and stuff. But the thing that the Moms for Liberty people that were running for local elections got obliterated across the country. That organization has no ability to get people elected at the local level. That's just so that it's a losing issue if you run on it against it. And it seems like that nobody really much above like the county supervisor level really ran on it as an issue at all.
Yep. In fact, we had our first openly transgender representative elected in the United States in this election.
Is that Americans aren't really into seeing biological men punch women in the face at the Olympics.
But that was not. So, like, first of all, like, I don't want to get too much into this. That was a cis woman, actually. This is just a lie. This is just a lie. And that lady gonna cash the fuck in. Watch. That lady gonna sue the fuck out of some people. There were no MTF trans boxers at the Olympics.
Unfortunately, you have this propaganda machine in the United States where it doesn't matter if it's a lie. It doesn't matter that they're lying. They can convince more than half the population that a lie is the truth.
Right. And
so they can literally do whatever, they could rewrite history. And more than half of our population will believe it.
This is wild because Sam, like a lot of his fans are like, oh, he doesn't fall for that stuff. Well, he fell for the cement milkshakes, and apparently he is perfectly willing to repeat something that I think he probably knows in like deep down inside isn't true. Unless he's like claiming that the IOC covered for this person, because that's the two things are it's not true, or the Olympics, the International Olympic Committee or whatever it is, the IOC lied on this person's behalf. Those are the two ways that this is. I forget, there was something I don't even remember. I don't want to get too much into it, but this person has been a woman their whole life. This is not a trans person.
Yep.
And if that sounds like transphobia to you,
well, no, it sounds like you're just lying. It sounds like you're repeating something not true. I don't care if you are afraid of trans people or don't like them. This isn't true.
I mean, that is transphobia because, you're calling a cisgender woman transgender to exclude her from the sport that she excels at is transphobic.
Right. And this is what I always say is that, like, there's bigotry always has a lot of collateral damage, a lot of maybe splash damage, we'll call it, where it splashes over onto other people. Like in high school, I was out, and my straight friend Ben, who was into like things that we would in a bigoted way probably assume are stereotypically gay. He was into like theater and singing and dancing. He got more homophobia than I did in high school, and whatever, like it wouldn't have been better if I'd have gotten a bunch of homophobic abuse too, but it was kind of fucked up. I even told, I was like, yo, I'm friends. I'm gay. What are you doing here? They're like, your boyfriend over here. I'm like, he's not my type. I date gay men. Or I forget I think I just said he's not my type because he wasn't my type.
Problem. Political equality, which we should want for everyone, does not mean that trans women are women. Trans women are people and should have all the political freedom of people. But to say that they are women and that making any distinction between them and biological women for any purpose is a thought crime and an act of bigotry, that is the precept of a new religion. And
does anyone say that?
Most Americans,
I'm like the position, and I think you and I like share this position. As far as sports go, I'm not on the panel or governing body of any sports league. Women, men, intramural leagues, fucking co-ed. I'm not. So it's their job, not mine. and I trust them to make the right decisions most of the time for most sports. And that's my position. And again, the thing he's talking about isn't true. That drives me nuts. Like, it seems not to matter to him. They like are trying to steal this cis woman's like femininity because she is fucking strong, basically, right? Because she can box like a motherfucker. Well, that's what you should be able to do to get into Olympic boxing. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
She beat some Russian person, and like some Russian organization that has a really official sounding name just claimed that she's a trans woman, and that's what these people are running with.
Yep.
To do with. I want to be very clear about this. I have no doubt that there are real cases of gender dysphoria. And for those people, we should want to give them all the help they need to feel comfortable in their own bodies and in society. How we think about this, how we understand it scientifically, all of that is still in flux. But there are 4-year-olds who, apropos of nothing, will claim to be in the wrong body. They're born a boy, but they insist that they're really girls, and they never waver from this. And it's pretty obvious in those cases that something is going on neurologically, hormonally, at the core of their being that is not a matter of them having been influenced by the culture. But conversely, there now seem to be countless examples where the possibility of social contagion is obvious.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. They've been saying this about gay people beforehand. That's how I spotted this. I'm like, wait a minute. I've heard this song before. This isn't even a good remix.
Yep. This is like that, the graph of the left-handedness where, hardly anyone was left-handed when it was, beaten out of you as a kid. Right. And then as soon as they stopped doing that, for some reason, like 15% of people became left-handed.
Ooh,
it was this like social contagion of left-handedness.
Right. This is dumb. Also, like, some people don't, like you'd mentioned, if somebody's like 3 or 4 and they say they're in the wrong body, that's probably not a social contagion. But then, like, where's the cutoff? And why are like a bunch of douchebags on the internet deciding where the cutoff is? What if somebody doesn't understand what they're feeling until they hit puberty or whatever, and then they're like, oh, or they meet another trans or gender non-conforming person. They're like, oh, this sounds a lot like me, actually, right? People come to realizations about themselves in all kinds of different ways at all different stages of life. And I don't think it's my place or Sam's here to like fucking like slice and dice this group of people based on like our own personal sensibilities or whatever. Like, it just doesn't seem like the way that this should be hashed out.
The success of trans activists in changing institutions. These kids are effectively in a cult, being brainwashed by a new orthodoxy. These are radically different cases, and we should not be bullied into considering them to be the same. Now, I've spoken to many Democrats in recent years and over the course of this election, and a shocking percentage of them imagine that all the controversy about trans rights and gender identity in kids is just right-wing bigotry and a non-issue politically, whereas it is obvious that for millions of Americans, it might as well have been the only issue in this election.
I don't think we have, because nobody ran on it. Nobody, like, even Trump didn't, like, fucking none of these people, at least up past like the county board of supervisors level, didn't see any of these people fucking leaning into it.
Like, in what way does he think that was obvious? Again, Trump didn't really gain a lot of voters.
And I just think, I don't think there was, I think after it was an ineffective issue for the Republicans in 2020, I just think nobody leaned into it.
Yep.
They're transphobic assholes, but because they simply do not accept the new metaphysics and even new biology mandated by trans activists and the institutions that they have successfully bullied and captured. And it's important to say that not all trans people agree with what these activists say and do. Having the thought police suddenly proscribe the use of the term woman and demanding that we speak instead of birthing person or menstruators.
Nobody's using birthing person. These are like, okay, so this was a ginned up bullshit. Person who is pregnant might be like in medical literature, like, right? Because that would describe the person you're dealing with. I don't think anybody calls fucking using birthing person. I think they saw it somewhere in some fucking piece of medical literature or some like press release and just ran with it and acted like that's what you and me are running around calling everybody, right?
Yeah. I think there is a small group of activists who want to call, everyone who can give birth a birthing person. And I might even agree with that, because a trans man who has a uterus and can give birth is a birthing person, but he's not a woman. He doesn't need women's reproductive care. He needs birthing people reproductive care.
And this
so,
is and
like, I might even agree with that, but I also have no problem calling it women's reproductive care. Everyone knows what that means. That's the phrase I use when I talk about it. I just know that I'm using words that aren't inclusive, and I wish that we could talk about it in a more inclusive way, but people just don't understand when you use language like that.
I just like, you could go with a pregnant person if they're pregnant. I mean, I don't know. I think this got ginned up because it was in a couple like research papers or some shit, right? I think this I don't think even a lot of activists were talking this way, because I think like you can find somebody on Twitter saying anything, right? But I think like people involved in like real activism like know like which battles to pick, and this seems like a weird battle to pick for an activist, right? Like,
yeah.
People with ovaries or some other Orwellian construction designed to test everyone's patience and sanity. The sight of people being deplatformed on social media or fired from universities for merely stating that there are two biological sexes. I actually know a professor who lost her job at Harvard over this.
There are two nodes to the spectrum of biological sexes, but there are more than two like sets of characteristics. There are intersex people. So like that has nothing to do with trans people. Like that's biology. Like trans people are not necessarily intersex. There's like, a Venn diagram of them, but it's not a circle.
It's just
so like, I don't know what the fuck he's going on about here.
It's just most people are at either end of the bimodal distribution, and then it's like an inverted bell curve almost. Maybe if we explained it like that to Sam, he'd understand it.
But yeah, like Sam's not a biologist, so I don't know what the fuck he's talking about here. He doesn't know what he's like, the facts about what he's covering, so I guess he's just being a bigot.
Witnessing an epidemic of gender confusion spread through our schools, when people with their own eyes could see that this was a social contagion, being encouraged by the schools themselves, the ultimate fruition of which in many cases is irreversible medical procedures.
Not by the schools. You can't even get a Tylenol at a school, you stupid fuck.
Teenage girls wanting double mastectomies, and some are actually getting them based on ideas being spread on TikTok. And any parent who resists this trend gets demonized, and under certain conditions...
Does he mean 18-year-old girls? Because they're legally adults. They can have elective surgery.
So there's top surgery done to people under 18, but it's like vanishingly few. I remember there's this episode of the Joe Rogan show where they're like, oh, all these people are getting all these young girls who want to be trans men are getting double mastectomies, and they tried to look up numbers for it. It was like in the entire country, it was like a 4-digit number over the last 10 years or some ridiculously low amount, right? It wasn't the epidemic that's being described here.
So like less than 1,000 people a year.
I think it was over the course of like 5 years or 10 years or some shit. Like
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Oh yeah, and somebody in chat just said this could also be something else. There could also be another reason where where a single or double mastectomy is performed. There are vanishingly rare cases of young people having breast cancer, for example.
Yeah.
We don't know like the reason for all of this.
You have found the most annoying thing in the fucking galaxy and hung it around your necks. I know people who haven't been touched by this issue.
All right. So Sam Harris thinks that trans people are the most annoying thing in the galaxy. Interesting.
To be fair, his interaction with this too is people dunking on him on Twitter before he quit. I think like this is, even though he's not on there anymore, I think that's been his interaction with the trans community for the most part, is people dunking on him. And so it's like going to color the way he kind of looks at it, I think.
It was the only issue that decided their vote. In fact, it is the issue that fully radicalized Elon, right? And he's spoken about this.
Well, no, the issue that fully radicalized Elon is that the person that he calls his son, who was actually his daughter, started talking shit on him. Like didn't want nothing to do with him, didn't want his money, didn't want fuck all. And then like Grimes left him, I think for if I'm not mistaken, then she started dating Chelsea Manning. That's all personal grievance for Elon, friend.
Yeah. Elon is a bigot. So it was his bigotry that radicalized him.
Elon continuously messaging to 200 million people on X and going to Trump's rallies and donating over $100 million to the campaign and supporting him on podcasts and doing everything else in his power to get Trump elected might have accounted for a few votes. Honestly, I think a doctoral dissertation.
No, because like hardly anyone who didn't vote for Donald Trump last time voted for him now. There were like, I think he gained about 500,000 votes.
Right. That just might just be new voters, possibly.
Yeah. So he gained like, what would that be? Like 1/120th of what he got before.
Right. Well,
like he really didn't gain a lot of voters. He's not resonating with people.
Well,
like it's not his message. It's that the Democrats absolutely are doing the opposite of that. The Democrats are turning off voters.
And we're going to notice here, because Sam's a rich guy, right, that we're not going to get any analysis or any complaint about the fact that one person can spend that much money on the election and not get thrown in fucking jail for just dumping that much fucking money into our political process. We're not going to get any of that, because I don't give a fuck who it is. You $100 million, fuck off. You shouldn't be able to spend that kind of money as an individual. Like on your on your own campaign, you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yep, you can thank Citizens United for that.
Several could be written on how trans activism completely destroyed Democratic politics without most Democrats knowing. Of course, people will be doing an autopsy on this election for quite some time, but there is some polling already that suggests that cultural issues in general, and this issue in particular, were the greatest drivers of swing voters turning to Trump. For the purpose of this poll, a swing voter is defined as those who are undecided in the presidential race or who have changed their voting preference since 2020, voting Democrat in one election and Republican in the other, or they were independent.
But there is some poll. I mean, it's, whatever. He's just talking, but like, which poll? Like, what do you mean? Do you mean exit polling? Because you're like, the problem with exit polling, right, is somebody, if I went to the polls and somebody was like, oh, I'm doing exit polling, I'm like, bye. I don't want to tell you how I voted or why.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a self-selecting group of people who want to talk to the people doing the exit polling. So exit polling isn't great. I'm not saying it should be illegal or they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying it's not like a good indicator of what the fuck's going on.
Yep. It also doesn't cover people who voted early.
Yeah.
Or voted by mail
and stuff. I mean, you could try to call them, I suppose, but.
Who had either indicated that they split their votes.
Which this time didn't make a whole lot of difference. There wasn't that huge swing. But in 2020, it definitely did. Donald Trump in 2020 was telling people not to vote by mail. So it was the vast majority of the mail-in ballots were Democratic.
Republicans, or who hold either a favorable or unfavorable view of both Trump and Harris. Right, so these were the people whose votes were in play. And according to this poll over at blueprint2024.com, titled Why America Chose Trump, Inflation, Immigration, and the Democratic Brand, when you segment the respondents in this way, for these swing voters, the strongest predictor of a vote for Trump was their response to the following statement. Kamala Harris is focused more on cultural issues like transgender issues rather than helping the middle class. Right, so transgender issues are...
So that's what's called a push poll, by the way. If you're pushing someone in a direction, if that's not like a question, the way you question that without pushing, you'd be like, to what extent did social issues factor into your decision on who to vote for?
Yeah, that is an extremely leading question.
Right. That's
You want a specific answer when you're asking that question.
Right. You're pushing someone in a direction.
Yep.
Flagged as the example of progressive politics in the Democratic Party. Now, you might want to say that neither Harris nor Biden campaigned as a vocal trans activist, and that's true. But honestly, if you wanted to account for Harris's loss and Trump's win,
I like how he said, oh, Harris out there campaigning on all those trans issues. No, she didn't actually campaign on trans issues. End of thought.
Right. Like, what, dude?
Base. And also indicate...
Like, really, if you want to talk about, like, people who are campaigning on identity politics, it is the fucking Republicans. The Republicans are out there talking about transgenderism constantly. They will not stop talking about it.
The Trump campaign did not lean into that issue.
True, but down ballot, a lot of Republicans did. And Trump had a few ads that were
right
anti-trans ads. So
yeah, I guess I don't see TV ads. So
there's this idea, this prevalent idea that it's the Democrats that make everything about politics, and that's just not true. It's the Republicans that are constantly turning everything into something political. They turned fucking vaccines political. Vaccines.
That was political before all this happened.
It was not.
All right.
Not as political as it is now.
HK, one of us is a disinformation researcher by profession now. I'm confident when I say that this was a political issue before. The thing is that it was used previously, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. Previously, it was used to rile up both like weird libertarians and sort of crunchy granola leftists. Now, QAnon sort of brought all those people together to save the children. I understand. But prior, it was still used in political messaging. It was just not used in the same way that it is now.
Okay. But like an Eminem puts on some new shoes and they turn that political.
Well, to be fair, Eminem is out there talking hella mad shit. So
that the far left has had over Democratic politics and the Biden administration, I think it would be hard to do better than to juxtapose the following two facts. On his first day in office, President Biden signed an executive order ensuring that trans girls could have access to girls' restrooms, locker rooms, and girls' sports. It took him 2.5 years.
But he can't, by executive order, force the hands of the sanctioning bodies like that. I don't think that's true.
I think he means in public schools.
Possibly in public schools, yeah. But again, like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of fucking 8th grade girls swimming, so who fucking knows? It'd be kind of weird if I was, actually, don't you think?
Yep.
Executive order.
Boy, that would be a weird thing to obsess over.
At the southern border. Why did he wait so long? Because the far left has always said that a concern about the southern border is racist. What more needs to be said about the degree to which the Democratic Party and the Biden...
Mostly because it is. Because, like, if you're actually worried about immigration, you don't really worry much about the southern border. That's not where illegal immigrants come from. So if you're worried
Airports.
specifically about the southern border instead of like people overstaying their visas, which is the vast majority of illegal immigrants, then yeah, it's racist. Because like you're worried specifically about border crossing migrants, like, you know, Latino people. That's who you're specifically worried about.
Right. Like the other thing, like you're always, they would drum up all this, oh, there's a caravan. And it's like, it looks like a bunch of people without any shoes trying to walk somewhere. Not really too terribly afraid of that. Maybe we should help them. Right. Like,
Yep.
With the will of the American people. As for the topic of trans rights and gender dysphoria, what Harris needed to do, at a minimum, is express her understanding that this issue is complex, that there's a legitimate concern about social contagion, that in certain cases, there's a conflict between...
I guarantee you that wouldn't have helped. That was not the thing that kept 10 million people home.
right. Another couple 100,000 people would have been like, huh?
Men and girls,
Yeah.
everything they...
The problem here was the economy is built for rich people. It benefits rich people. And right now, it basically only benefits rich people. And the Democrats kept saying, what are you talking about? The economy's great. Isn't this economy so great? Quit complaining. Why are you guys complaining so much? And real Americans are actually struggling. They're really struggling. They have real problems with this economy that really only works for the rich. So the working class is getting shafted. And Donald Trump comes in and says, you know, hey, working class, you're getting shafted, and it's those illegal immigrants that are doing it. So I'll go and fix that. And unfortunately, that resonated with people, even though it's the wrong solution to that problem. The solution to that problem is raise the taxes on the rich and use that to help the working class get a leg up in the economy. Raise minimum wage, raise workers' benefits, raise taxes on the rich, and invest in infrastructure, invest in like new opportunities.
Right. I don't think a lot of people were thinking about this issue. The question, the push-pull question he described kind of gave away the game, honestly, on this. If he can't see that that's a push-pull question, then he has no business even giving this analysis. Like I am
Yep.
loath to give electoral politics analysis because it is not like my lane, right? Like I make fun of people who drink their own urine, and people who smell their own farts, like Sam Harris. But this is incorrect. The only way that works is with a question as described, and then the only people you're going to get to answer that question are the people who like agree with the assumption built into it, probably.
Yeah, and if you think about half of that, like if you agree with half of that question, then it sounds like you're saying the other half. Because the question, it was phrased like, do you think Kamala Harris focused more on social issues than the working class? And it's like, well, I think she didn't focus on the working class enough. So, like, would I answer yes to that, or would I answer no? Because
the answer to that is you, a person who talks about politics on my show. The answer to that should be like, you're asking me a very leading question, so I'm not going to answer.
Yeah, yeah. Like, the only real answer should be, can you ask me multiple questions that don't, make assumptions about my answer?
Right. Or the right answer is fuck off. You're probably from the Heritage Foundation.
Yep.
There's a conflict between giving trans women and girls everything they want and protecting the rights of biological women and girls. And the jury is still out on many questions here. And policy in Europe has changed radically.
What rights do biological girls not have that trans girls do? Like, if a trans girl can compete in sports, does that take away someone else's rights?
And again, we're not talking the top of the layer cake here. We're talking like the girls' sixth grade basketball team, right? Like,
Yeah. But like, I don't have the right to choose my opponent. Like, if I go into basketball, I can't say like no one taller than me is allowed. You know, I can't choose my opponents like that.
and again, this is like the fucking the seventh grade basketball team shouldn't even be worried about this, right? They should make sure everybody's safe, everybody's treated with respect. They should teach sportspersonship. Or listen to me, sportspersonship. I'm the fucking woke problem here. And like, yeah, primarily like safety. You want everybody to be safe and like look forward to going to do the sport because sports are good for you, right? These should be the concerns of the schools until at least you get out of high school. Maybe there's a different level of scrutiny or whatever might be applied at the college level, but still maybe not, because that's just you're supposed to be at the university to like get an education. So the sports are like off to the side here. And then I guess when you get up to the highest professional levels, there might be some conversation to be had here, but I'm not part of that conversation. I ain't got shit to do with it. I don't even watch sports on TV. Most of Sam's audience are not sports fans.
Yep.
Reasons, right? This topic is a total mess ethically and politically. And the orthodoxy among Democrats and in the elite institutions that they have influenced is that the trans activist line is the only ethical line to take. But the truth is, every shibboleth that came out of the far left in recent years contains within it the same recipe for the destruction of democratic politics. Each is like an evil hologram.
What does he mean that like the far left, everything? Like he believes some of the things, like he's said on his show that he believes some of the things that most people would think are far left. Now in other countries, there's just things that happen like universal health care. And in some Northern European countries, and even to some extent in the United Kingdom, there's some level of government housing that might look like a housing guarantee. Those people also might be a little disaffected, right? The things that I don't know if he said anything about a housing guarantee, but he has said before that he is for a single payer system like every other normal country has. So, and that's the progressive or left wing of the Democratic Party right now. That's what those are like the sort of boots on the ground policies that people really, really want. And the Democratic Party has not leaned into those policies in any meaningful way. It's crazy that in the 2020 election cycle, remember when they said, are you for single payer healthcare? The only person besides Bernie that raised their hand was Kamala. But boy, howdy, did she not say shit about it in the 2024 cycle.
Unfortunately, yeah.
She could have run on that. I don't know if it would have won, but like I just wish the fucking Democratic Party would go down swinging for something at least once in my life. My God.
Yep.
Latinx. Who was that for? Only 3% of Latinos are in favor of this silly rebranding of their ethnicity. Again, Trump did better among Latinos than any Republican in memory. Do you think it was because there wasn't enough identity politics rammed down their throats from the left? Do you think they just need to see some more white people admonished for the sin of...
Yeah, I don't think anybody said... I think Latinx was like a flash in the pan. I think the only person on this show who uses that term is the councilman.
And that was like years ago. Has anyone made a fuss about that?
I think they're also just taking something that showed up in like sociological literature that some people picked up and started using in their own like day-to-day language to try to be like nicer and more inclusive or whatever. And then I don't think people are I don't use it as Latinos. No. Or if I know that a group of people are from South America, South Americans, Central Americans, people from Mexico, like I don't know, but I try to be more specific because I don't want to be misunderstood. But I don't think this was a problem either. Like, I don't think anybody was, I don't know, I'm not going to do it right now because we're trying to entertain. Oh, this isn't very fucking entertaining, is it? But I want to search through Kamala and Tim Walz's speeches for that word. I bet I'd be surprised if we found it twice in all of it.
Yep. You think another lecture about sensitive Halloween costumes might do the trick? much of Democratic
What?
politics.
Oh, now he's going way back to like 2018. But like, yeah, you shouldn't like remember the Megyn Kelly thing where she was like, "Oh, you're supposed to." When I was a kid, you could wear blackface for Halloween. I don't see what the problem is if you're trying to be Diana Ross. And it's like, well, I don't. Man, you're kicking it old school here, Sam. Yeah, don't dress as Pocahontas. Like, or if you do, try to make sure you do it right, and you don't just dress like a character from an old Cowboys and Indians movie. Maybe there is a appropriate way where you can be Pocahontas. I don't know.
Has become a bad SNL sketch. Democrats simply have to understand that this is one of the reasons that we're getting 4 more years of Donald Trump. 4 more years of this man holding more power and responsibility than any person on earth. If it sounds like I'm blaming far-left activists for this, along with everyone who bent the knee to them, I am. Sure, inflation didn't help, but the Harris campaign and the Democratic Party couldn't change the price of groceries. They could control whether the vice president gave a rational accounting of why she no longer supports taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgeries for undocumented immigrants in detention. You know how many ads?
I'm just wondering how many people that are being detained by ICE or whatever are even asking for that, right? This is another thing where it's like this gets blown up. I think that the answer to that question is be like, I'm the vice president and I haven't heard much about this. Is this something that people are talking about? Like, right, that's the right, like.
But like that was what he said in the beginning of that sentence was the real issue is, you know, people were actually talking about the price of groceries, and their response was always, well, the economy is doing great. And that's not the right response to that question. You know, people are really struggling. The correct response is not, well, no, you're not.
Right. I don't know that maybe a good response to that is, well, we're working on legislation. I hope Congress will work with us to raise the threshold for which people can get some food assistance. Some of it comes from the federal government. Some of it comes from the states. We're going to work with governors to see if we can maybe raise the income threshold on some of this so that the government can help people make sure that they got food on the table while we try to figure out what's going on here with inflation versus people's wages. Like, I'm not a politician, but that's what you do. Like it's easy.
I mean, what I would have done is talk about minimum wage, the fact that hasn't gone up at all in the past 15 years. Federal minimum wage is exactly the same now as it was in 2009. That's fucked up. People are hurting because of that. People can't live. The fact that housing is now completely unaffordable for my generation and lower, like someone who's like in their late 20s thinking about starting a family, wants to buy a house to fill with children. They can't fucking do that.
Unless their parents buy it for them, right?
Yeah. Like houses are unaffordable right now, and the problem is not the problem is not, you know, transgender surgeries in prisons. The problem is that rich people aren't being taxed enough. So raise the taxes on rich people. And another problem is there's a lot of legislation about specifically houses that makes it harder to build houses. And like, I'm not in favor usually of like, you know, slash the regulations, but like a lot of these regulations don't make sense. And another problem is that we have corporations buying single family houses and corporations you know, buying these like condos where, you know, you have this fucking nation full of Airbnbs and people can't have a place to sleep unless they're on Airbnb paying $500 a night.
Trump campaign.
Or, you know, paying their $4,000 a month rent.
In some markets, it was...
I know that's not usual, but that's what it is in Sunnyvale.
In some markets, it was a third of their ad spend. She's for they, them. He's for you. Someone find me the video where Harris made any sense at all on this topic. And the same can be said for all the other cultural issues that have been poisoned by the far left. Literally everyone I know who voted for Trump, and this includes some extraordinarily influential people, like Elon, literally everyone was focused on cultural issues. It wasn't inflation for them. It was trans activism and the insanity at the southern border. And
that is not what I need. I mean, I know we shit on exit polling before, but that's not what the exit polling said. The exit polling said it was like 60% of people, their main issue was, or no, not six, it was like 40% of people, their main issue was the economy. Their main issue.
Right.
Something like another like 35% of people, their main issue was democracy.
I also wonder what he thinks the Democratic Party should do if the Republican Party or the 501c3 and C4 groups, what is the response to somebody trying to create a moral panic around something? Because that's what's going on here. That's what happened. That there was, I don't know so much the Trump campaign. It might have been like outside groups, right? Like the super PACs or whatever. They created a moral panic around this stuff. And we learned in the Satanic Panic that you can't do anything about a moral panic, kinda, right? You had the FBI going around during the Satanic Panic telling the police, this is the weirdest thing ever. The FBI was telling the police not to go looking for weirdos to arrest, which is a little strange for the FBI to have done, but it didn't work. And that's the FBI telling the police that they're barking up the wrong tree. So, I don't know, what he's not going to propose any response other than for the Democratic Party to lean in, I guess, to the moral panic and be like, yeah, that's true, actually, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And homelessness and crime in our cities, and the unwillingness of Democratic DAs and mayors to do anything about it. The fact that when you go into a CVS and you need to call a locksmith to liberate some razor blades and Tylenol.
So you don't need a locksmith. You need a person with a key. You also need a key to use the fucking bathroom. And that's been that way in a lot of cities for a long time, because like those little packs of razors, they're fucking kind of, they're not like breaking the bank buying razors, but you can fit a bunch of them in some cargo pants and leave with $200 worth of fucking razor refills.
So this problem was not a real problem. This is an excuse that CVS, I think it was CVS, it might have been Walgreens, an excuse that one of these companies gave to closing several of their stores. There's not a shoplifting epidemic going on in the United States. Shoplifting, as far as I know, has stayed relatively the same. Violent crime has gone down. It upticked a little bit in 2020, but now it's down again. So we talk about this stuff on Down Ballot a lot, and I have this hypothesis that there's like a floor for these things, like in society. And what happens is when the rate of property crime or violent crime or whatever, it hits the floor, it'll bounce off the floor. It's a kind of a bad metaphor, but it's like it bounces off the floor and ticks up a couple %, and then people zoom fucking way in on that graph and are like, crime is out of control, right? Yeah. It's the inability to zoom out on a graph. Yep.
That is an absolute disgrace. It is a clear degradation of the quality of life in American cities. And these things mattered on Tuesday when people went to the polls. And most of our largest cities are run by Democratic mayors, at least 2/3.
Very few people said that crime was their main reason for why they voted. And the split between the two, surprisingly, Donald Trump was ahead on who do you think would handle crime better? Which is funny because he's a convicted criminal.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's better at doing the crime.
Yeah. But it was pretty close. I mean, I think it was Trump was 51 and Kamala was 47 or something.
Right, but the other thing here is that people will vote for the mayor, the city council, or in places where the DA is, or in places where the police chief or the sheriff are elected. People vote in those elections based on what they perceive crime to be like in their community and what they perceive will be done about it by these officials, right? I don't think it goes very far up the ticket.
I think it's a higher percentage of the top 20. What are the Democrats doing about homelessness? The Democratic Party largely owns this problem. And for years.
But this is he's totally just erasing the fact that there are homeless people in small towns and rural communities, right? It's just that they don't there's just a place where there's 1,000 people. If there's 10 homeless people, that's 1% of the people are homeless, right? But 10 people, it's easy for them to hide if there's just 10 of them and you're in a rural area where there's a lot of space, right? And so you don't see it. Versus in a city, you could have 0.5% of the people homeless, but they're going to be very visible because there's fucking nowhere to hide in a city where everything's been developed.
Yep.
Been acting like the answer to it is for everyone just to become more tolerant. They won't police the streets, but they'll police the language. These people are not homeless. They're unhoused. Okay, great.
I mean, what are you going to do to police the street? Like, this is the most confusing policy to me is instead of giving people housing, what we do is we make it illegal to be homeless, and then we put homeless people in prison, which is public housing.
Right, and then
very expensive public housing, way more expensive than just giving them regular public housing.
And then if you count it as a crime, you can say that because you've arrested all these people for being homeless, now the crime rate is up.
Yep. And now that they're in prison, according to our Constitution, you can make them slaves. Because we never abolished slavery in the United States.
Lives in a city who has to shepherd their kids past some raving lunatic standing outside the supermarket, or who knows that there are whole sections of town that he shouldn't even set foot in because they look like the third act of a zombie movie. Many of these people...
He's talking about the fucking Tenderloin. I was in the Tenderloin not too long ago, before they went through and cleared all the thing. I was fine. I wouldn't send a child
no zombies?
there. I wouldn't send a child there, but like maybe don't leave your kids unattended walking down the fucking streets anywhere, actually, if they're under like, I don't know, 13 or 14. Like...
are done with your politics. And so are millions who don't live in big cities, but visit them, or just see the images on social media.
But that's the thing is if you don't live in a big city and you see images of San Francisco, depending on what you're seeing, who you follow on social media is going to tell you what you see, right? Like me, if I see images of San Francisco, well, it depends on which account I'm on, right? Because I have sock accounts. But if I'm on my like real account and I see images of San Francisco, it's my friends partying, right?
Yep.
To live like this. This is the sort of issue that was easily and justifiably weaponized against Democrats in this election. Or take the Hamas supporters.
I mean, he's correct, but only in that, this is the kind of issue that it's so easy to spread misinformation about. And that's yet another reason that giant propaganda machine that the right has in this country is so effective. They can spread this kind of misinformation, this kind of false, there are so many people in the United States who think that California is this like shitty wasteland where everyone is suffering. And it's like, California is gorgeous. And the people here, for the most part, love it.
Yeah, you're not going to like.
That's why there are 40 million of us here.
You're not going to like what he says next.
Sort of issue that was easily and justifiably weaponized against Democrats in this election. Or take the Hamas supporters on our college campuses. You don't have to be Jewish to see how shameful this is.
Okay, so we could be here for an hour. We will not be here for an hour, but we could be here for an hour. You're not seeing people supporting Hamas. And he's talking about the Jewish vote. The Jewish vote went to the Democrats. And a lot of these activists, a lot of the people leading the activism on college campuses around the ethnic cleansing and genocide happening in Gaza are Jewish students. And this stuff is sponsored by Jewish student groups. This is not Hamas support. I don't talk a lot about it, but a lot of people do, and the people who do talk about it, and me, Hamas is not a good organization. They are elected. They are the elected leadership of the Palestinians, but the last election was in 2006, so there are people who are 18 years old who have been alive during a time where there's never been allowed to be another election in the occupied territories.
This is an assault not just on Jews and Israel, but on Western civilization. Or let's just call it what it is, real civilization. If the Democrats...
Excuse you?
Wow.
Does he think China isn't a civilization?
I mean, he's just a racist.
This is awful. China's eating the economy. China's eating our fucking lunch on what we might call the economy. So I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Party can't figure out that civilization needs to be defended from barbarism. What do you expect is going to happen in a presidential election? Yes, Biden and Harris were not terrible on this issue, but they talked out of both sides of their mouths. They bent over backwards to not offend the people who are totally confused in the Democratic Party about what happened on October 7th.
No, we all agree on what happened on October 7th. They attacked a fucking rave and killed a lot of people. They should not have done that.
Yeah, it was a terrorist attack.
Right. But the problem wasn't that the nation state of Israel responded. The problem is that they're still responding over a year after, and they're responding with like overwhelming force that has killed just fucking countless civilians.
Yep. People who had literally nothing to do with it.
And about the problem of Islamism and jihadism worldwide, who think in terms of Islamophobia rather than really protecting human rights. Here's one clue on the path back to sanity on this issue, which you may have missed. The hijab is not a symbol of female empowerment.
It is here in the United States because they're going to call you all kind of racist shit if you wear it in the United States.
Yep.
Of the women throughout the world who wear the veil are forced to by men who will beat the shit out of them if they don't. It might be time to figure this out if you actually care or want to credibly pretend to care about the rights of women on planet Earth. Okay, there is simply no question that Democratic moral confusion on many of these issues cost Harris millions of votes.
But the problem is some issues are morally confusing. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't have the fucking correct moral answer for every goddamn issue that's facing the world right now. I guess Sam does.
He certainly thinks he does.
That has to happen now among Democrats. And I hope it does. But the concern now is that 4 more years of Trump and Trumpism will prevent it. I mean, Trump is such a provocation to the left and to liberal institutions that Democrats could find themselves doubling down on all their delusions. Needless to say, this will be exactly what Trump and the MAGA cult want, because it will be politically suicidal. If you are a Democrat who voted for Harris, please absorb this. You lost more people of color than you ever have in a presidential election, while running against Archie Bunker. Worse, Trump is actually supported by real racists and white supremacists, and that still wasn't enough of a problem. Who do you think your identity politics is for? You're really going to keep celebrating pornographers of racial grievance like Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ibram X. Kendi? Should we just give another Pulitzer Prize to the 1619 Project?
Is Sam making the proposal that the Democrats should be more racist? Is that what he means?
I am having a hard time. See, this is the thing, is that he's doing this thing where he's identifying problems. So far, very few of them. He hasn't talked about. He used like groceries kind of as an aside, almost like as a thing that people don't care about, which is weird. And he's identifying problems that are just problems for him vis-a-vis the Democratic Party. That the problems he's identifying don't seem to be the problems that happened. I think among other things, Republicans weren't going to vote for you, so stop asking them to. Nobody likes Dick Cheney. Stay away from him. You didn't lean in when they were talking about like child sex trafficking. Nobody leaned into the fact that this dude was friends with Epstein. You don't want to spend a lot of time on that because there's a lot of conspiracism around that issue that you end up around that issue, and you end up with a blue version of QAnon, unfortunately, on your side. But you can bring that up. And like, I just like the fact that Biden dropped out right before the convention, and there was no primary. The primary gets people excited. The primary is one of the things that is just it even happening is like a small tick in favor of the challenger in the presidential election, right? Because you hear and see more of the primary candidates during the election cycle versus the incumbent. And
Yep.
And like Biden himself said that some version of he thought he had the only political machine in 2020 that could defeat Donald Trump. That turned out maybe to be true. Maybe he had the only political machine that could do it, and that he did not plan on running again. And then he decided to run again anyway, and he couldn't do it. And it was by the time he decided not to run again, it was too fucking late.
Yep.
It was too fucking late. Like, oh, what a nightmare. It was, and Bernie's too old to run. It wasn't going to be Bernie. I don't fuck him. The people that thought, oh, it would have been Bernie. No, it wouldn't have. He's too old to run. Wasn't going to run again. The man's old. He's probably going to retire soon. Shout out. I like Bernie Sanders. Perfect. Not always. But principled guy who tried to speak to the issues that people actually care about, primarily healthcare. But there would have been a primary, and maybe it would have been Tim Walz at the top of the ticket. Maybe it would have been Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Maybe, hopefully, it wouldn't have been Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom would have got clobbered. It probably would have been Gavin Newsom, and he would have got fucking clobbered.
Yeah.
You really think racism is the problem in America? And what we saw this week was just a victory for white male?
Well, racism is one of the problems. Yeah, absolutely.
That's how you're going to explain Trump's popularity at this point? Trump,
Yes, a lot of the country is very racist. Yes.
from every race.
I mean, Sam's one of them. So yeah, of course he doesn't see that.
You know, we think about like the Obama campaign, right? And how, racism must have ended there, except there were people that during the primary that voted for Hillary that like, why'd you vote for Hillary? They're like, oh, I'm just not ready for a black president yet. Those people were racist too. The Democratic Party too. Like, you're not ready for a black president. It sounds kind of racist to me.
Yep. And sexism also is a huge part of it. You know, racism and sexism exist in the U.S. They are a big problem in the U.S. Absolutely.
People, right? Where he lost 1 percentage point when compared to 2020. You're going to chalk that up to racism? We're about 5 days out from the election when I'm recording this, and I'm still hearing prominent Democrats say things like, America was never going to elect a black woman for president in the year 2024.
Well, it might be a reasonable analysis. I wouldn't make that analysis, but it might be a reasonable analysis.
I think that the problem of racism and sexism were overcomable, and Kamala did not overcome them. I think if she had ran a better campaign, focused, like when people told her, like, this is the problem, we can't afford groceries, rather than basically saying like, no, the economy is great, you can afford groceries just fine. You know, if she had actually like really focused on those kind of issues, it may have been overcomable. Another big problem though was that people just seemed disinterested. A lot of people that voted like Googled, did Biden drop out of the race the day of? So, you know, a lot of people were just completely tuned out. And I think a big problem of that is that, you know, people aren't at the point where their life is in danger or their livelihood is in danger. And that's what it takes to get, you know, people like that into politics. And in 2020, we had that where, you know, their life was in danger. Their livelihood was in danger. And, you know, that drove a lot of people out to the polls. So we didn't have that this year. And there was nothing that Kamala ran on to overcome that. So, yeah.
It's not the issue. And if you keep this up, you're going to get President Candace fucking Owens someday. Wouldn't that be a perfect rejoinder to this stupidity? I hope it's obvious from everything I've said and written for years, and from the first half of this podcast, that I understand the frustration and even revulsion that people feel for the far left and for the progressive orthodoxy that has infected our institutions, for the censoriousness and thought policing and the gaslighting and the lying.
Okay, Sam, what gaslighting? I think we have a list of words on our wiki that no longer mean anything, and gaslighting, I think, was the first one we added, because gaslighting is when, like, essentially you're doing bad things to somebody and try to convince them that they're crazy for thinking the things that you're doing to them are bad. And is that happening here?
I understand the degree to which our institutions
well, I mean, yes, but on the side of Donald Trump.
By this. And anyone who's followed my work from the beginning knows that I've been outraged by this encroaching moral blindness for at least 20 years, right? Long before wokeness, or Black Lives Matter, or trans activism, or defund the police. In the years after September 11th, 2001, when
are you going to talk about when you called for, like, just nuking a fucking country because there might be terrorists there?
Focus on the problem of Islamism and jihadism. I was complaining about just this. I could see that anyone who described these problems too honestly would get tarred as a racist, as though that made any sense. I saw how someone like Ayaan Hirsi Ali
too honestly
touchable by left-wing think tanks and liberal writers.
You just hate that I'm so honest about how other races are inferior to the white race.
Whose whole shtick was to show his concern about the rights of women in the developing world. Even he felt obliged to condemn Ayaan as an Islamophobe. This is a woman who is quite literally being hunted by Muslim theocrats in one of the most cosmopolitan societies we have, modern Holland. For years, I witnessed journalists obfuscate about the threat of Islamic extremism. Someone was found just stabbing people in a European city or mowing them down with his car, shouting.
No, that was in Canada. That was an incel.
And it would be reported that the motive for the crime was still mysterious, and the perpetrator would be described at most as an immigrant. Sometimes every detail like this was suppressed, and you'd have no idea what happened. Just random mass murder.
I mean, sometimes, yeah.
Kind of politically correct.
So who commits more murders? Is it citizens or immigrants per capita?
Well, it's citizens. The other thing going on here is, again, the FBI, not known for being a left-wing organization, was, like, for a very long time being like, hey, everybody, your eyes are off the prize. The coming problem is white supremacy, white supremacist groups. That is the coming problem. Again, the FBI, what are they, fucking leftists? No.
Nope.
They had people who had infiltrated these groups. They knew what was coming. They warned us about it for a very long fucking time, and fucking everybody was like, oh, we should be afraid of Muslims on the airplane praying.
Yep.
The other topics, as the left-wing hatred of Western civilization and capitalism and white people has distorted everything left of center. Okay, I understand how infuriating this is, especially on an issue that touches your life directly. Right? I know what it's like to read an article in the New York Times and to spot obvious lies. But the alternative to the failure of journalism simply isn't the fire hose of lies and half-truths and conspiracy theories that you find on X. Okay, and it's not the calculated and ever-present distortion you find in right-wing news channels that never had any journalistic standards to violate in the first place. Okay, there is simply no alternative to healthy institutions that maintain their credibility even when they make mistakes by reliably correcting their errors. Right? And when they fall short of this standard, they can be pressured.
Oh, so I expect a correction for this about the boxer that you said was a trans woman.
Better, because they have intellectual and moral scruples. It's an imperfect process, but it's the best we've got. Elon Musk never corrects his errors. Tucker Carlson never corrects his errors. Donald Trump never makes errors because he never stops lying. He's playing tennis without the net, and his fans love it. Putting your faith in deranged personalities isn't a viable alternative to having truly liberal institutions that you can trust and that can be obliged to earn your trust back when they fail. I understand how satisfying it is to find a new bully to beat up the other bullies who've been making you miserable. Okay, but the problem is, this new bully is worse. Right?
Wait,
this
what?
New bully has no principles. This new bully has no journalistic or academic or scientific conscience to
So
appeal.
now he's just talking about the people who've been making fun of him and criticizing him for the last 20 years, right?
Well, I think he's saying Trump is worse than the left.
Oh, I don't know. I thought he
Which-
was saying the other thing, that the bullies that have been talking shit on Sam Harris are worse than the Trump bullies. But I it's hard because he's, in his attempt to sound like he's being careful, he's making it sound like he could be saying either thing, right?
Yeah. But like when he's talking about the left being bullies, I think that's what he means, is specifically the people mean to him on Twitter.
Well, he's not on Twitter. I bet he has an account where I bet he name searches himself on Twitter still to this day.
Whatever might be wrong with a person like Anthony Fauci or Francis Collins or any of the other doctors who have been demonized right of center for their approach to setting COVID policy, at least they are real doctors and scientists who have some professional scruples and reputations to protect among people who actually know something about medical science. RFK Jr. has none of that. He's just a cowboy taking shots at the establishment. The Joe Rogan podcast is not a substitute for the Wall Street Journal or the Kennedy School at Harvard. It is simply not progress to have a comedian like Dave Smith, who's apparently done his own research, interviewed about the history of the Middle East or the war in Ukraine like he's the next Henry Kissinger. All of this free
I'm sorry, Henry Kissinger is bad.
access to
Was bad.
information
Rest in
is
piss.
making us dumber. Of course, I blame Trump and social media for how divisive our politics have become. Trump is what you get when 51% of a society just declares bankruptcy on core moral values and political principles and journalistic ethics and necessary institutions. Okay, there is no real defense of Trump and Trumpism. All his defenders act like his critics just don't like the man's style. He's just too crass or bombastic. Or they think we're worried about hypothetical things that might never happen. We're worried he might become a fascist in the future. And needless to say, these concerns are telltale signs of Trump derangement syndrome. But none of that is true. Right? The problem with Trump isn't his style, and it's not merely what might happen in the future. The problem is what has already happened. It's the damage that Trump has
He's going to
already
stop short of calling him a fascist, though. Watch.
caused to our democracy. And it's the fact that he has turned the Republican Party into a personality cult that celebrates all this damage as a sign of progress. For instance, while many of us really wanted Kamala Harris to win on Tuesday, we are also breathing a sigh of relief that she didn't win by a very narrow margin. Why are we relieved about this? Trump and Elon,
I would prefer that over what happened.
other high-profile freaks, spread so many lies and conspiracy theories about election fraud that they effectively rigged our society to explode. On the day of the vote, Trump and Elon were both spreading lies about a terrible fraud being perpetrated in Pennsylvania. Now that Trump won, where's the concern about fraud? It just evaporated. I guess Elon looked into it and our voting machines are fine now, right? Pay attention to what happened here. These guys imposed a serious risk of injury on our whole society for purely selfish reasons. And the fact that we're now relieved to have avoided a civil war is itself an injury to our democracy.
Well, we gotta put a stop to this, and we're not going to watch the rest of it. So what I notice here is that Sam apparently doesn't, he thinks that the group of people he's talking about, I would put you and me squarely in this like progressive wing of the Democratic Party, right? That that we're not listening to his concerns enough, but then he spent this whole time, and I'm not, there's like 11 minutes left of it. I don't think he's going to like stop doing that. He's going to all of a sudden be like, progressives, I would like to talk to you. I would like to hear what your concerns are. My view of this is probably tunnel vision from the people who've been making fun of me on Twitter for 20 years or however long. I'd like to find common ground with you and see how we can work together so that next time we can work on messaging and all this stuff together so that the next time we can avoid the kind of problems that we're having over here on the left, which is where Sam claims to be. And some of the policy he wants is squarely on the left, primarily single payer healthcare, which is a weird thing for a rich guy like him to want, actually, to be perfectly honest. You think his healthcare ain't top notch? Mm-hmm. But there's a 0% chance that that's what he's going to spend the next 10 minutes of this doing. So what he wants is he wants me to reach out a hand to him, and then he wants to take a step back so that I have to take a step forward to get into the old position that he was in, right? It's like, what's the saying? It's like, meet me in the middle, says the reasonable man as he takes a step back, right? I forget who said that, but I was like, oh, that's the fucking thing. That's what the IDW does, right? So he wants grace and understanding for people who hold positions like his, but he does not seem very interested at all in returning that grace and understanding to people who he disagrees with, particularly like you mentioned, Ibram X. Kendi or, Ta-Nehisi Coates, both who happen to be black, by the way. Just interesting that he chooses them as his punching bags, right? So if this was as honest as he claims to be, you would think he would be like, hey, I am for, a lot of the progressive stuff that you want, like economically, and we have some disagreements on social issues, but I'd like to talk to you and see what we can do about this so that we can get on the same page so that if the next person that runs is, I don't know, fucking Nick Fuentes or something, or he mentioned Candace Owens, again, another black person, by the way, that we can work together and make sure that our messaging is good so that we can reach your people and my people and get a big tent coalition going to stop this next time. He ain't gonna do that. Fuck that. You think his audience would fucking vomit if he did that?
This all also assumes that we are going to have an election in 4 years, which, I'm not going to say it's like unlikely that let me put it this way. I think there is a non-zero chance that we won't have an election in 4 years. Hopefully I am wrong, and there's a 100% chance that we'll have an election in 4 years. But
you believe in 4 years from now. That's cute.
Yeah. Maybe I didn't go far enough. There is a non-zero chance that there won't be 4 years from now.
I just, this guy, this would have been his chance after this happened to be like, hey, we need to work together. I've had my differences with, I don't know, me fucking do Ta-Nehisi Coates. I've had my differences with Ta-Nehisi Coates. I've had my differences with democratic socialists, with people who supported Bernie Sanders, with people who are Palestinian activists. And what we need to do to stop what's coming, if it isn't already here, is to work together. And there's none of that in this. It's just him like whining that people like basically to his left hold positions that are to his left.
Yep.
And there are people, we call them the dumb left. They're not necessarily to our left. They're just dumb. But if we have to work together with those people, we have to work together with those people. If we as progressives, this is a progressive leftist channel, mostly our audience. We joke around about me being a shit lib or whatever, but I don't think I really hold those positions. It's just funny. And if people like Sam and I don't know who else is like in that lane, sort of like fucking Steven Pinker, even friend of Epstein. But if it's those people's turn, actually, if they think they have all the smart answers on messaging and rhetoric to win the next election, well, you know what they need to do? They need to reach out to the people that might vote with them to stop what they think is coming. And they're not going to do that because it's not to their advantage as content creators to bridge that gap and to try to have progressives on. Like if instead of arguing about the bell curve, Sam Harris decides to have Ezra Klein on to talk about what do we do next time? Where can we agree, and where can we find some common ground, and how can we work together even in the places where we have disagreements on the minutia? How do we work together on these things to save our republic? I'm not a big Ezra
but to
Klein
that extent, I think it's also that they're not interested in that as status quo enjoyers. Like, they don't want the kind of change that progressives want.
Right, but if he doesn't want like another like right-wing lunatic to be the president in 2029, he's gonna have like the progressives are gonna have to come out and vote against that person. Like it's a non-insignificant part of the coalition of the Democratic Party, and if Sam was serious about his shit here, he would be doing a little more olive branch and a little less finger wagging,
Yeah.
Well, that's the show. You wanna read the show out? The post game isn't going to get much better, by the way.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you want to check out our other shows, you can do that on echoplexmedia.com. And if you want to help us out here, you can do that on patreon.com/Echoplex or eplex.store, where you can pick up some of our cool merch, like the tinfoil hat that Dave was wearing tonight. If you're here live, stick around after the song. We've got a continuation of the show where we change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks, and we hopefully talk about something else this time. And if you're listening to the podcast, maybe check us out live sometime. All right, here is Boomers by Periscope.